The sun beat down on a dusty road, shimmering heat rising from the asphalt as an old, but meticulously maintained, 1998 Toyota Camry puttered along. Behind the wheel sat Mr. Elijah Eli Reid, a man in his 60s with a kind, weathered face, a simple plaid shirt, and a worn baseball cap. A faint smile played on his lips as he hummed an old blues tune. They say first impressions are everything. But sometimes those first impressions ain't got nothing to do with the truth. Sometimes they're just assumptions. And assumptions, my friends, they can be a dangerous thing. Eli's peaceful drive was soon interrupted. Ahead, a sleek, modern police cruiser was parked by the roadside, its lights flashing lazily. Standing beside it was Officer Mark Jenkins, a man in his 30s, immaculately uniformed, with a smug smirk etched on his face. Jenkins was leaning against his car, arms crossed, looking bored, until his eyes landed on Eli's Camry as it subtly ticked a few miles over the speed limit. A predatory glint appeared in his eye. He pushed off his car and strode to his door with a confident, almost theatrical swagger. Moments later, sirens blared, startling Eli. He sighed, glancing in his rearview mirror before pulling his humble Camry to the shoulder. Jenkins approached the car with exaggerated slowness, his hand resting on his holstered weapon. He peered into the car, his gaze sweeping over Eli's simple attire and the car's age, a look of dismissive judgment forming on his face. Well, well, well. Look what we have here. Another speed demon in a classic. License and registration, pops. Jenkins' voice was condescending, drawling. Eli slowly, deliberately, reached for his wallet and glove compartment. His movements were unhurried, almost serene, a calm that clearly annoyed Jenkins. "Good afternoon, officer." "Here you go," Eli said, handing over his documents. His eyes met Jenkins's, and for a fleeting moment a subtle, almost imperceptible glint appeared in Eli's eyes, a hint of something deeper, something the officer entirely missed. Jenkins took the documents, barely glancing at them before turning his attention back to Eli, a superior smirk playing on his lips. He held Eli's license up, scrutinizing the photo with an almost theatrical grimace. "Elijah Reid, huh? Address on Elm Street." Elm Street. Not exactly Beverly Hills, is it?" "You know, Mr. Reid, this old beauty of yours, it looks like it's seen better days. You sure you can afford the fine for speeding? Because let me tell you, those tickets ain't cheap, especially for folks who drive a vehicle of this vintage." He gestured dismissively at the Camry. Eli's smile didn't waver. His gaze remained steady, a knowing glint in his eyes that Jenkins completely missed. He simply nodded, a small, almost amused chuckle escaping his lips. "Well, officer, I always say, it's not about what you drive, but how you drive it. And as for affordability, I usually manage to make ends meet." He paused, a subtle smirk playing on his lips. Little did the officer know, this classic had taken Eli to some pretty important places, and he'd managed to afford a few things along the way that were far more valuable than any ticket. Jenkins, emboldened by Eli's calm demeanor, misread it as weakness. He leaned closer to the car, a self-satisfied grin spreading across his face, tapping his pen against Eli's license impatiently. "Managed to make ends meet, huh? So, Mr. Reid, let me guess. You heading to pick up your lottery winnings? Or maybe you just got done with a shift at the car wash?" He chuckled, a derisive sound. "Look, I got better things to do than babysit a senior citizen in a clunker. So let's just get this over with. Do you have proof of insurance, or am I going to have to impound this rust bucket?" Eli slowly reached into his glove compartment again. Jenkins watched him with an air of impatient superiority. Eli pulled out a neatly folded document. "Here's my insurance. Fully comprehensive, officer. Been with the same company for 40 years. Good record. Never had an accident." He handed it over. His eyes met Jenkins's again, and this time, the subtle smirk on Eli's face was more pronounced, almost challenging. Jenkins snatched the insurance document, barely glancing at it. He started writing the ticket with exaggerated flourishes, muttering under his breath, shaking his head. "Another one who thinks the rules don't apply to them. Just because you're old doesn't mean you get a free pass. This is a public road, not your personal drag strip. He ripped the ticket from his pad with a theatrical flourish. He held the ticket out, but instead of handing it to Eli, he deliberately held it just out of reach, forcing Eli to lean forward. He then snatched it back slightly, prolonging the interaction. "You know, Mr. Reid." Jenkins leaned into the window conspiratorially, his voice smirking. "I've seen a lot of folks like you. Think they can just cruise through life, ignore the rules, and expect everyone to just let them be. But not on my watch. I believe in upholding the law, no matter who you are, or what kind of pre-owned vehicle you're driving." He winked, a truly repugnant gesture. Eli's composure remained unbroken. His gaze was steady, almost hypnotic. The subtle smirk returned, deeper this time, a knowing gleam in his eyes that seemed to say, "Oh, officer, you have no idea." The tension in the air was palpable, a silent battle of wills being waged. Jenkins, blinded by his own arrogance, completely failed to perceive the shifting power dynamics. "Officer, I assure you, I have the utmost respect for the law, and I understand the importance of following rules," Eli said, his voice quiet but firm, a ripple of steel beneath the calm. "Perhaps, however, we have different interpretations of what upholding the law truly entails. Sometimes the law isn't just about the letter, but the spirit, wouldn't you agree?" Jenkins stared at Eli, momentarily taken aback by the unexpected depth of his response. He blinked, then scoffed, dismissing Eli's words as irrelevant philosophical musings. He thrust the ticket at Eli. "Just take the ticket, Mr. Reid, and try to keep your philosophical ramblings to yourself. Now, do you have any questions, or are we done here?" He crossed his arms, leaning back against the patrol car, a triumphant smirk on his face. He'd won, or so he thought. "Actually, officer, I do have one question," Eli said, a slow, deliberate smile spreading across his face, his eyes fixed on Jenkins. He paused, letting the words hang in the air, the silence stretching. "And it's not about the ticket." Jenkins looked mildly annoyed, but also intrigued. He raised an eyebrow, a slight twitch in his lip. Eli slowly, deliberately, reached a hand into his inner jacket pocket. The movement was precise, unhurried, almost ceremonial. "If you are enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means a lot to us. We are just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you. And back to the video." Jenkins watched Eli's hand, a flicker of impatience, then annoyance, then a sudden, dawning curiosity on his face. Eli's hand emerged from his pocket, not with a wallet or a phone, but with something small, metallic, and gleaming. Eli held it up, catching the sunlight. It was a gleaming, gold-plated FBI badge. Prominently etched on its face were the words, "Federal Bureau of Investigation, Internal Affairs." Jenkins's eyes widened. The triumphant smirk instantly evaporated, replaced by a look of utter, unadulterated shock. His jaw dropped. His face paled, the color draining from it as if he'd seen a ghost. His entire posture stiffened, the arrogance replaced by a visible tremor. He looked like a deer caught in headlights. "Special Agent Elijah Reid, FBI Internal Affairs. Badge number 3478. And Officer Jenkins, I believe we need to have a much more in-depth conversation about upholding the law," Eli said, his voice now deep, authoritative, completely devoid of the previous calm, yet still measured and impactful. Jenkins stumbled backward, his hand fumbling for his sidearm, then stopping, realizing the futility. He tried to speak, but only a choked gasp escaped. His eyes darted nervously to his body camera, then back to Eli. The realization of what his body camera had recorded washed over him, and a cold dread settled in. Agent Reid? I didn't. I thought, this is a misunderstanding. I was just doing my job," Jenkins stammered, his voice trembling, barely a whisper. He attempted a weak, placating smile, which quickly contorted into a terrified grimace. "Doing your job, officer?" Eli leaned forward slightly, his voice a low, dangerous growl. Was insulting a citizen doing your job? Was making assumptions based on a man's vehicle and appearance doing your job? Was mocking his financial status doing your job? Because from where I'm sitting, officer, what you were doing was harassment, profiling, and a blatant abuse of your authority. Jenkins was visibly shaking. He backed away further, his eyes wide with terror, glancing around, as if hoping someone would appear to rescue him. But the road was empty. Eli continued, his voice gaining momentum. You see, Officer Jenkins, my job in internal affairs is to ensure that officers, like you, uphold the highest standards of conduct. Your body camera, which I presume is active, has provided a crystal clear record of your professionalism, or rather, your lack thereof. Every sneer, every demeaning comment, every assumption you made, it's all there. Jenkins tried to stammer out an apology, but Eli cut him off. Save it, officer. Your apology now rings hollow. I'm going to need your badge number, your supervisor's contact information, and I will be reviewing the full footage from this stop. Consider this a formal complaint, which will be thoroughly investigated. And trust me, officer, Internal Affairs takes these matters very seriously. Soon after, the scene shifted. Jenkins, now completely deflated, stood rigidly by his patrol car, his head bowed, shoulders slumped. Eli was on his phone, speaking calmly but firmly. Yes, Sergeant Peterson. This is Special Agent Reid, from Internal Affairs. I'm currently on Route 17, just outside of town. I've just concluded an interaction with Officer Mark Jenkins, badge number 458. Yes, that's correct. The nature of the interaction involved significant concerns regarding professional conduct and potential profiling. I'll be requesting the full body camera footage immediately. I'll send a secure link for the report to your email within the hour. Jenkins winced with every word, the color draining from his face even further. He knew his career was on the line. Another patrol car pulled up, and Sergeant Peterson, a stern, experienced African-American officer in his 50s, stepped out, looking grim. He assessed the situation, his gaze moving from the shame-faced Jenkins to the composed Eli. Jenkins, what in the blazes is going on here? Sergeant Peterson demanded, his voice low and tight with disappointment. He then turned to Eli, his expression shifting to one of respectful acknowledgement. Agent Reid, sir, my apologies for this. I assure you, we do not tolerate this kind of behavior. Eli nodded curtly to Sergeant Peterson. Jenkins tried to interject, but Peterson cut him off with a sharp look. Sergeant, Eli said, I understand. However, the footage from Officer Jenkins's body camera will speak for itself. He engaged in discriminatory language, made numerous disparaging remarks, and clearly abused his position of authority, all while interacting with a law-abiding citizen. This is not just a breach of protocol, it's a breach of public trust. Sergeant Peterson's face hardened. He turned to Jenkins, his voice now cold and resolute. Jenkins, you're relieved of duty, effective immediately. Hand over your badge and weapon. We'll be conducting a full internal review, and you can expect a formal disciplinary hearing. Jenkins, defeated, slowly unclipped his badge and holstered his weapon, handing them over to a stony-faced Sergeant Peterson. The arrogance he displayed earlier had been completely replaced by utter humiliation and fear. He glanced at Eli, a look of profound regret in his eyes. Eli watched Jenkins, his expression unreadable. There was no triumph, only a quiet resolve. He stepped forward, his gaze meeting Jenkins's. Officer Jenkins, I hope this serves as a harsh but necessary lesson. Power is a privilege, not a weapon, and treating every citizen with respect, regardless of their appearance or perceived status, is the cornerstone of true law enforcement. You've forgotten that, and now you'll have to face the consequences of your forgetfulness. Jenkins nodded slowly, unable to meet Eli's gaze. He turned and walked towards the passenger side of Peterson's cruiser, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Sergeant Peterson turned to Eli, a look of renewed respect and gratitude on his face. Agent Reid, thank you. Seriously, this kind of behavior gives all of us a bad name. We've been trying to weed out officers like him, But sometimes it takes something like this to truly expose them. We'll make sure this is handled properly. I have no doubt, Sergeant, Eli replied with a nod. The trust between the community and law enforcement is fragile. It takes consistent effort and accountability to maintain it. Keep up the good work. Weeks later, the police station looked different. New posters promoting community engagement and diversity training adorned the walls. Sergeant Peterson addressed a group of officers, his demeanor serious but hopeful. What happened with Officer Jenkins was a wake-up call. It was a painful lesson, but one we needed. We are reevaluating our training, focusing heavily on implicit bias and de-escalation techniques. Every officer will undergo mandatory refresher courses on community policing and respectful interactions. We are here to serve and protect all citizens, not to judge them. A montage of new initiatives followed. Officers participating in community outreach programs, interacting positively with diverse groups, attending workshops on cultural sensitivity. The atmosphere was palpably more open and respectful. A newspaper headline flashed across the screen. Officer suspended for misconduct after FBI internal affairs investigation. Below it, a smaller headline read, Community leaders praise police department's commitment to reform. Agent Eli Reid, back in his old Camry, was driving through a vibrant, diverse neighborhood. He stopped at a crosswalk to let a mother and child pass. He smiled genuinely, and they smiled back. He looked content. Sometimes, all it takes is one moment to shine a light on what's hidden. One moment for assumptions to crumble, and for truth to rise. It wasn't about proving a point, not really. It was about reminding everyone that respect isn't earned by a uniform or a title, but by treating others with the dignity they deserve. It was about reminding them that beneath every unassuming exterior, there might just be an unexpected hero, waiting for the ultimate reveal. Eli pulled up to a community center. He got out of his car, a warm smile on his face, and was greeted by several people who recognized him, shaking his hand, clearly admiring him. On the wall of the community center hung a plaque dedicated to Agent Elijah Reid, champion of justice and community trust. Officer Jenkins learned a harsh lesson, and while his path to redemption will be long, the incident served as a catalyst for a positive shift within that police department. It's a testament to the idea that true power lies not in authority, but in integrity, empathy, and the unwavering commitment to what is right. The ripples of one moment can indeed change an entire tide. Never underestimate anyone. Assumptions can blind us to the true character and capabilities of others. And when power is abused, accountability is essential for justice to prevail. What are your thoughts on Officer Jenkins's actions and Agent Reid's incredible response? Have you ever witnessed a moment where someone was completely underestimated, only to have their true power revealed? Let us know your experiences and opinions in the comments below. Your stories are just as important. And remember, the quietest individuals often hold the loudest truths. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay kind, and never stop believing in the power of an underestimated hero.